Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're doing a head-to-head comparison between the Huawei P30 Pro and the iPhone X. Part of the reason we're comparing these two is because they're somewhat close in price. On Swappa, I can get this for a minimum of $385 and for $430 for the 256GB model. Also on Swappa, I can get the Huawei P30 Pro. At its cheapest right now, it's $440 for the 128GB model. Some specs to note: the iPhone X uses the A11 Bionic. It has 64GB of base storage and 3GB of RAM. The Huawei P30 Pro uses the Kirin 980. It has 128GB of storage at base, with this model being the 256GB version, and it has 8GB of RAM. They use different biometrics, so the iPhone uses Face ID, as you can see there, and the P30 Pro uses an in-display fingerprint scanner, but you can also use Face Unlock in the optical fashion. Software-wise, the iPhone X is running iOS 13. It will also be getting updates for a couple more years, whereas the P30 Pro is running Android 10, and it probably will not get Android 11. That being said, you will probably see on XDA forums where you can get the newest version of Android for this phone. When it comes to the software, I prefer iOS 13 to EMUI 10. Usually I could like a version of Android more than iOS, but in this case I prefer iOS. Both of these have their own ecosystem within their software. Huawei makes Windows laptops, and Apple obviously makes MacBooks. You have the iPad, the Apple Watch. There are Huawei smartwatches as well, but I feel like the better ecosystem goes to the iPhone here. As for the design, the iPhone X is rocking the same front-facing design that you've seen since this was released. It is on the iPhone XS as well as the iPhone 11 Pro. Its back design uses the camera bump that I probably like the most for looks-wise. Obviously it's not as versatile, but it looks very nice, and it uses stainless steel sides, but you can't see that from here obviously. In regard to this design, it is modern, but it's not as modern as the P30 Pro. It does have a notch like the iPhone, but this one in the teardrop fashion. It's not very intrusive, barely gets in the way. It's pretty good overall. It's got those curved edges, and they're not too curved to where it bothers me, so they look really nice. It uses aluminum sides as well as a really cool gradient on the back. As you can see here, I love this back glass design, what Huawei is doing with the colors. And then we have the displays of the two. So the iPhone X rocks a 5.8-inch 2436 by 1125p OLED display with a pixel density of 458 ppi, and overall it looks really good. The P30 Pro uses a 6.47-inch 2340 by 1080p OLED display with a slightly lower pixel density of 398 ppi when comparing to the iPhone. The iPhone does win in resolution and ppi, as you can see, but I do enjoy the larger display of the P30 Pro. So for YouTube, both these phones max out at 1080p. So the resolution here is the same, but we get a larger display on the P30 Pro. And overall, that is probably why I'd prefer to use the P30 Pro here. This is a 19:8 aspect ratio video, and you can see both of them optimize it pretty well. You know, small bezels on the end, but I would prefer watching it on the P30 Pro just because of the display size. Now here's a video in a normal 16:9 aspect ratio video. This is my own, and the same story goes here. You know, it's a little bit bigger on the P30 Pro. But now we'll give you guys an idea of the sound quality of each. So the iPhone rocks stereo speakers, where the P30 Pro only has one bottom-facing speaker. And in my experience, the iPhone has a little bit more bass. I don't know if you can tell from there. I do enjoy the stereo speakers. It's less easy to disrupt, but the P30 Pro's single speaker is clearer to me. And I think you're gonna get somewhat of a similar performance when it comes to sound on each. Both very good. The camera is where probably one of the biggest discrepancies between these two phones lie. Maybe I'll show you a couple pictures where we compared these two, but overall the P30 Pro's camera is superior. It takes better overall shots in almost every situation from what I can tell. It's more versatile. You got the ultra wide camera, the 5x telephoto. Any day I would take the P30 Pro over the iPhone X as a camera, even in video where iPhones have excelled. This is 2 years newer though, so we gotta take that into account. Battery life is another area where the P30 Pro takes the crown. It has some of the best battery life I've ever used, whereas the iPhone's battery life is not good and it really needs a battery replacement. The P30 Pro can also charge back up at 40 watts, whereas the iPhone supports up to 15 watts, I believe. Overall, in the battery department, the P30 Pro destroys it. The 4200 milliamp hour battery in the P30 Pro might not be the biggest I've used on Android, but they do a really good job with their battery optimizations, kind of like how Apple does with smaller cells as well. Even though 4200 is not a small cell by any means. Nevertheless, one of the best batteries I've used. Great job, Huawei. As for performance, we did mention earlier the iPhone X is using the A11 Bionic and the P30 Pro is using the Kirin 980. I'll show you a quick comparison of the Geekbench score, where the iPhone wins both in multi-core and single-core. But either way, both phones are extremely smooth, and I feel like maybe the iPhone is a little bit smoother. They both use 60 Hz panels, which was not uncommon at the time of their release, and the differences in smoothness are probably a result of software rather than performance, just given how close they really are. But like I said, the reality is there isn't a huge difference. And as for gaming, that trend continues. So we'll show you COD Mobile on both of them. We'll start with the iPhone here. As you can see, really smooth in game so far. Okay, and now we'll switch over to the P30 Pro real quickly. Very smooth, just like on the iPhone. Oh my god, I'm garbage. Okay, not bad. So as you can see there, for gaming, both phones are going to be just fine, even over time. They both perform extremely well. You're not going to see huge differences. You'll be happy with either one when it comes to performance and gaming. Here's my final verdict. If battery life and the camera are your two most important factors when buying a smartphone, then go for the Huawei P30 Pro. I prefer the software of the iPhone, and it will get more updates, plus you get the gateway to the Apple ecosystem, so if those things are important to you, iMessage and such, go for the iPhone X. It's going to be a great phone as well. The hardware overall of the P30 Pro is superior, but you'll have to decide which factors are most important to you when choosing between one of these two phones. So thank you all so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Hope you all are doing well, and peace.